Every single time I'm on a call with a fellow startup founder and we're talking about the go-to-market strategy, they're interested in joining my go-to-market program, inevitably at a certain point on the call, I'll be like, okay, so I'm on your website. And very quickly, 9 times out of 10, the founder will be like, whoa, we're redoing the website. And I always laugh a little bit. And by now I've mentioned it enough times in the video where founders are also like, I know you're gonna laugh, but we're changing our website. We're in the early stages, we're constantly in a sense of flux on what do we put on the homepage. And we'd like to say that we're in a very controlled way, we're experimenting. It's really not. We're trying to see what sticks. It's really hard and you're constantly changing it. And I remember with ToutApp, this was a thing. Now, what if it didn't have to be that way? What if there was an actual framework you can follow to actually craft your website and really determine what to put on each of the parts and how to get it right, and then test it in a controlled way? There is a way to do that, and that's what I'm gonna walk you through in this episode. I'm gonna give you the 4 principles you absolutely need to know. It's really 3, but I have a bonus one for you that you absolutely need to know so that you can actually create high converting homepages that you're not changing all willy-nilly all the time. Intro. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unstoppable. I'm TK, and on this channel, I help SaaS founders like you grow your SaaS businesses faster with an unstoppable strategy. If you are new to this channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and that bell icon. That way you'll get notified every single time I drop an action-packed episode like this with the TK energy. Now, if you're already part of this community, if you're part of my go-to-market program, my scale program, my launch, welcome back. It's so awesome to see you over here. Now, I remember in the early days of ToutApp, we were really trying to figure out our market segment, the core important urgent problem we were solving. We were trying to scale and a whole lot at once. And our homepage it showed. It just showed because we weren't really sure who we were serving and why and what the transformation was. And we kept trying to change things until we came across a framework that actually helped us craft our homepage. I'm not talking about landing page, I'm talking about the homepage. Literally when you typed in toutapp.com or wherever you wanted to go, whatever your domain is, that homepage where investors will go to, potential customers will go to, prospects will go to, partners will go to understand, even your mom will go to understand what is it that these guys do. Now, in this episode, I'm gonna walk you through the 3 principles plus the bonus principle that you absolutely need to know so you can create high converting homepages so that you're not constantly testing things without any sort of system, so that you can actually get to a high converting one that'll help you accelerate the growth of your SaaS business. So if you're excited to dig in, go ahead and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's go into principle number 1. So this is the homepage framework that I'm gonna walk you through. And there's literally the 3 core principles plus a 4th bonus one, fear, and I'll get to that. The first thing that you absolutely have to nail is understand how a homepage is structured. Homepage is structured essentially around emotion over here, and I learned this from a guy named Russell Brunson, who's a brilliant marketer, and more, really. Emotion over here, CTA over here, call to action, logic over here, and fear over here. Once you understand this part, and as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Instead of like, how do we create this homepage and what are all the things we throw in there? It became clear on like, cool, here are the core themes that we're gonna be hitting. We're gonna dig into each of these one by one so that you understand what goes in each of these spots and why, so you can actually craft your homepage. So the first one you need to understand, let's pick a different marker, is emotion. Emotion is the first thing. This is the big thing they're gonna see over here with an image of your SaaS thing along with a button. And this is the big thing that people will look at as soon as they land on your homepage. And this is what we call the emotional piece. Literally, people will make a split-second decision on whether they stay or hit the back button or close the tab or keep reading based on what you say over here. It's kind of like, when you send a cold email, if the subject line doesn't get them to open the email, it almost doesn't matter what's in the body of the email. They'll never see it. It's the same thing with this headline, and that's an emotional piece. Now, how do you create this headline? Ultimately, what you're trying to communicate over here in this 3 to 4 words, maybe 5, along with the little paragraph, is what is the result you're going to deliver? What is the problem you're solving? What is the transformation you're bringing? And how is it differentiated? And you're trying to pack all of that into a few words. And that's what the big challenge with building a homepage and doing anything really in the early stages as you're figuring out your go-to-market strategy is, how do we actually communicate what we're doing and why, and how does this all come together? And ultimately, there's some core things that come into play on this. Number one, you actually need to know what your value prop is, your value proposition. You actually have to develop that. Number two, you have to know what your strategic narrative is. And number three, you really have to define how you differentiate. Like, for example, if your value prop is, the exact same as Slack, like your team chat, and your value proposition is we reduce the number of emails, we'll get you out of email, we help you communicate asynchronously. Even that won't be enough anymore, because people will say, well, cool, that's Slack. Well, how are you different? Why should we pay attention to you? And this is part of the challenge, because right in this few words and maybe a paragraph, you're trying to communicate all of these things in a succinct way. And a lot of times what ends up happening is we're trying to just make up words here. This is why we keep changing the homepage over and over without going through the discipline to actually develop our value proposition, to develop our strategic narrative, to develop how we differentiate, and then create the words to communicate these key pieces. So the first thing you want to understand with this principle number one is you're evoking emotion here. And with this hero word, and this quick screenshot, you're creating this desire, you're creating that like, hey, we're worth opening this email and reading the rest of this page, essentially. And the way you're gonna come to those things is not by guessing and trying something new every week. You could do that, it'll take you a while, but really developing your value prop, your strategic narrative, and your differentiation. From that, coming up with this set of words. And as soon as you do that, you'll actually be able to evoke an emotion. Now, one quick thing that comes along with the emotion is they will read this and they may feel compelled, but they still won't trust you, which is why an important part of this section in the emotion piece, and you'll see this in a lot of homepages, is some set of logos. People essentially want to see logos of customers that are actually using your product, so you can actually exude that trust. And the bigger the logos, the more recognizable they are, the more powerful it'll be. Sometimes I see founders cheat. They'll put the logo of Wall Street Journal and the Next Web and Crunchbase in here. And customers, like, it doesn't work that way. Like, yeah, they covered you for your fundraising announcement, but that's not what drives proof for your actual SaaS product. Now, I have those logos in my homepage, but I'm more of a coach. And so that makes sense. But for a SaaS product, it doesn't make as much sense. They want to see customer logos of who actually is using your product and seeing success. So that's principle number one. All this first piece is literally about evoking the emotion and getting people to stay and getting them to trust you. And believe it or not, as human beings, even when you go to a website for a SaaS product, you're reading this thing, looking at the logos, looking at the picture, and noticing on how you feel. And based on that, very quickly, you're making a decision on, do I stay? Do I go away? Do I read more? Do I scroll? Or do I just close the tab? And this is what most founders get wrong. And the reason you get it wrong is you don't work through these key pieces to actually get to the answer. You keep guessing at this answer, and maybe you skip this part, and that's what throws people off. So that's principle number one. Once you have that, then let's go to principle number two. The next thing that you're gonna have to decide on is the call to action. That's essentially this button right here, the big giant button over here, and you may actually have it over here a couple of times as well. The call to action is, if you believe what I'm saying, if this is a transformation you want, if this is a result that you want, then here's what you gotta do. Now, this is an important piece. Number one, you need to actually repeat the CTA throughout the page. That's one thing that founders miss. The second thing you need to do is you need to decide, do you actually have a free trial button here? Or do you have a talk to sales? Now, sometimes people cheat and try to do both, but what I get founders to think about is pick one that is the most appropriate for how you market purchases, how they buy, how they think about the product. If you're selling to individual contributors and that's the buying decision maker for the most part, they'll want to just get into the product. If you're talking to managers, directors, VPs, CEOs, then they're not really going to try the product. They're not individual contributors. They're not using the product. They're going to want to talk to sales. Now, I did an entire video on how to make this decision. You can check that out here. You don't have to go right now. I'll link to it below, but watch that video where I talk about the pros and cons of talk to sales versus free trial and which one is right for your SaaS business. And based on that, whichever one you pick, you need to put that call to action in all these key parts, because that will ensure that as you're convincing them on an emotional level, clear call to action for them to take action so you can move them into the next stage of the process. Okay, now I have the next two principles, but before I do that, let me just pause here for a second. Are you starting to see the power in this? The power in this is a lot of times we think that we just have to write some words and put a certain framework, but like just plug it in. But that's not what it is. The difference here is you have to do some of this root work, this foundational work, and then these pieces will actually become a lot easier to fill out. This almost becomes just a non-important activity because this is where the foundation is built. But if you just try to put in a bunch of stuff here without doing the hard work here, then you'll basically be changing your website every single week. And that's the mistake I made until I learned a proper framework to follow, and that's evolved over time. If you're starting to see the power in this, just by doing this part of it, if you're starting to see the power and why this is important, how important this is, and how you can transform your homepage, can I just get a yes in the comments below? Also smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It really likes it when you do that. Also, before I go to number 3 and number 4, if you're at that stage where you're building out your homepage, your go-to-market strategy, and you're like, you know what? We need to figure out our value prop, our strategic narrative. We need to figure out how to differentiate what our ICP is. If you're figuring out these pieces and you want a framework to follow, this is exactly why I created my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. Inside of this coaching program, we now have over 65 founders in the program. Nearly, I think about 2 or 3 have already raised the Series A as they've graduated from the program. 2 have raised the Seed Plus, more coming. This is a very effective program to give you a playbook on how to build out a go-to-market strategy and execute on it. So I encourage you to check that out. I'll link to it below. I'll tell you more about it at the end of this video, but let's go to principle number 3. So you have emotion, you have the call to action. There's gonna be people, as soon as they read this is exactly what they've been looking for, they're compelled, they'll take some action. That's only gonna be a certain percentage of people. And this is the thing that Russell Brunson talks about quite a bit. There's a group of people that are more logical. So the emotional one is not gonna be enough. They're gonna scroll down and say, well, I'm not convinced. Tell me really what you're gonna be able to do for me. And that's when the logical part of the homepage comes. This is the logical part. Now, there's some critical things you will actually have to incorporate in the logical part. You'll have to incorporate the features and the benefits. You'll have to incorporate the actual use cases. You'll have to highlight, here are the use cases. Sometimes you can do them at once, or you have to highlight it separately. Sometimes you may even have to incorporate actual testimonials. You can actually show a case study video of a customer that got success and incorporate right over here, because they want to see what the use cases are, what the features and benefits are, and who else kind of vets it that corroborates these logos that you have over here in a deeper way. This is the logical piece. And a lot of times you put in a bunch of fluff. You're like, I got to put a bunch of stuff. Let's put a bunch of stuff in icons. It's like, no. People are logically trying to understand if this product will solve their important urgent problem and if this important urgent problem is important. So this piece is super important to actually highlight what are the features and benefits, what are the use cases, what are some testimonials, so that on the logical side of the brain, they're more convinced like, okay, cool, this seems legit, this all checks out. I'm gonna take that call to action. That's the third principle. So you have the emotion piece that captures attention, then you'll get a certain percentage of people. Other percentage of people will actually scroll down and then they'll want to see the logical. What are the features and benefits? Lay them out in 3 columns. What are the use cases? Maybe list out the 4 or 5 use cases. Give me an example using a customer testimonial. And then I'll be like, okay, this makes a ton of sense. Next step, talk to sales or free trial, depending on the strategy you figure out. For that, I'll link to that video below. Now, one thing you'll notice is a home page is different than a landing page. Over here, you may also link to about your company, for example, or the leadership team. You can link to a page around that. You can talk about the funding you received. All of these things you'll start to include in your homepage. But on a landing page, which is different, you won't include a lot of these things, even though you may follow the same framework. So to understand what is the difference between a homepage where you do include all these things and link to these other things versus a landing page, you'll want to check out this video. You don't have to go right now. I'll link to it below where we go into what the core principles are around a landing page that you wouldn't do in a homepage. It'll kind of round out your training around this. I'll link to that below. Now, at this point, there's one more thing. There's a bonus one, fear, which I put right from the beginning, which you're probably wondering, what does that mean? A lot of times, by the time you scroll down to this point, you've done the features, you've done the use cases, you've done the testimonials, there's still gonna be people that won't be convinced. They're like, I don't know, maybe. Now here's the problem. Maybe you spend a bunch of money on ads to get them to this page. Maybe you put out a tweet that they saw and they clicked on it. It's unclear if they're ever gonna come back if they don't take action now. So you wanna actually add it with one more thing. In case they're not convinced yet, they're still scrolling, they haven't clicked the call to action, you wanna add one more thing, and that's fear. At this point, they're like, I don't know. And so what you wanna do is like, hey, look, you might be missing out. if you don't take action on this, or at least learn more about it. Now, at this point, they may not want to talk to sales, or they may not want to do a free trial, but they would be willing to get more information without committing to more time. And you can actually address fear in them and get them to convert. And this is typically where we teach our folks in the program to link to their manifesto. A manifesto is essentially a PDF that turns into a lead magnet, even though it's a lot more than that, that teaches them about this problem space, that convinces them that here's the big macro trend that's happening, here's how we think about it, here's the problem, here's what exists, here's how you solve it with our product. It's a detailed strategic narrative that teaches people how and why you exist, and how you solve the problem, and why you solve the problem, and why it's important. And so at this point, if they're still not willing to commit to a sales call or a trial, if they're still down here and they haven't left, chances are you need to just instill some fear. And usually we help you create messaging around a manifesto on here's how you position it, here's how you upsell it, here's the landing page. So you'll put that right over here and you'll say, hey, look, you don't want to be left out. Here's the big transformation that's happening. We teach you all about it inside of this ebook. Go ahead and enter your email address and you'll download it and you'll get access to it right away. You don't have to commit to any of these things, but you'll at least still give us your email, and that way you won't lose out. And then later on, you can make a decision on whether you want to do a trial or talk to sales, or do a strategy call or whatever it may be. A lot of times you'll notice that at the end of a homepage, you'll just see a bunch of links and it's a dead end, and maybe the CTA. But if they haven't clicked on any of these CTAs yet, then chances are they're not going to do anything else here. So what you want to do is round it out with linking to your manifesto here, so that it's a little bit of a non-committal way to say, well, I'm all the way down here. I'm already read all this stuff. I'm kind of interested. Fine, I'll download the ebook. I'll download the manifesto and I'll go through it. And then at the end of the manifesto, we'll hit them up again to either do a trial or to make a sales call. And when you do it this way, you're essentially making sure that your homepage addresses all the objections that may come up, whether it's the emotional part of the brain, the logical part of the brain, or the fear part of the brain. And that way, you'll actually have a high converting homepage. Just to recap, number one, you need to actually make sure that you're highlighting for emotion. Don't just make up a bunch of words here. Think about what your value prop is, your strategic narrative, what your differentiation is, who your ICP is. Think about these things. As you work through these pieces, this will become a lot easier. Number two, think about what your sales and marketing model is going to be. Is it free trial or talk to sales? It's a highly strategic discussion to actually make that decision. You can't just do both, at least in the early stages. Your customers buy a certain way. So check out the video, I'll link to it below to learn which decision to make around that. And then number three, cover the logical brain, talk about features and benefits, use cases, testimonials, about the team, all those pieces, and have a CTA again. And then cover the fear, this is the bonus one, and link to your manifesto. You do this, this is the homepage framework that we teach inside of our program. You will be able to actually have a highly converting homepage. And now you know how to do that. Now, what you may not know is, how do I actually develop my value proposition? How do I develop my strategic narrative? How do I develop how we differentiate? How do we develop our market segmentation ICP? How do we actually create our manifesto? How do we articulate the features and benefits? How do we collect testimonials? These are all key components that are required. That's the foundational work required so that you have a really great homepage. Now, you have two choices. One, you can just put random stuff here and keep iterating and keep changing it, and you waste a bunch of time. Or you can follow a proven framework to develop these things and then create a really great homepage that highly converts and iterate from there. This is exactly why I created my SaaS go-to-market coaching program. Inside of this program, I give you the step-by-step framework to follow so that you can actually develop all these key pieces, your manifesto, your strategic narrative, your ideal customer profile, and then I teach you how to execute on it through your homepage, your landing page, ads, all the other channels, so you can actually accelerate the growth of your SaaS business. Now, the way to actually learn more about this is you just need to go to tkcater.com/GTM. tkcater.com/GTM. You'll get all the information about my go-to-market program. You'll be able to learn exactly how I work with you. And then if you're interested in joining, you can apply to get on a call with me. When we get on a call, we'll review where you are in your SaaS business and if we can help you grow faster with our go-to-market program. And if it's a fit, then we're off to the races and we start working right away. It's super simple. Just go to tkcater.com/GTM or follow the link below and you'll be able to learn more about the program. You'll be able to apply to join. We'll be able to get on a call and then we can start working together if it's a fit. Super simple, tkcater.com/GTM. Lastly, if you got value from this video, go ahead and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you're new and if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit the subscribe button and that bell icon. I drop a video like this 2 to 3 times a week with the TK energy. And lastly, remember, everyone needs a strategy for their life and their business. When you are with us, yours is gonna be unstoppable. I'm TK, and I'll see you in the next episode.